Alexander Augustus. Is your mic working?
We could do a... oh, hello? Oh, yeah, just something on.
Yeah, man. So we've been honored to have you here. Obviously, your work speaks for itself, and I can't tell you enough how awesome it is.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
It's great. So to start, why don't we talk about how did you end up here? What does your career journey look like? How have you hopped around the world?
I mean, how I literally ended up here is I always wanted to work in Manchester. So yeah, I applied to do a project in Manchester, and then I got this email you do realize this is in the US, right? And I was like, yes, absolutely. Of course, I wouldn't do something so stupid as that. Yeah, so, it really begins in the UK. I studied in my undergraduate, I tripled in anthropology, archaeology, and art history. So I've always been interested in the way that things are made, the people behind them, society. And then I lived and worked in DC for 1 year, working in the Corcoran Museum. And then I did my MA in spatial design. So I was always making art, but I come at it from these weird angles of anthropology and design rather than necessarily an artist, that archetypal kind of character that's there in overalls covered in paint. I'm more coming at it from a kind of well, what can the machines do for me, and the storytelling. I think that's what it really is, it's storytelling. Yeah.
I think that's one of my favorite parts about your work is that you dive so deeply into context storytelling. It really adds meaning to something. I think we talked the other day about how when you go on a tour or an art museum or a location, and having a guide to add context to what you're seeing and what it is, it really creates such a value to what you're experiencing. And I think you create that spectrum within your work, which really just drives it in a very strong way. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it really began this new strain of work really began during the pandemic, because obviously I couldn't escape from the house, right? And all of the commissions became digital commissions, and I was like, well, I can write, so why don't I write something which says the same thing that the visual piece would say, and then why don't I hire an actor and a musician to do that with me, which I did, and I got some funding from a gallery in Korea, and we made the first audio piece, which was Anger, which is about Queen Elizabeth becoming a mutant and going on an adventure in a COVID apocalypse. Yes, and that got funding, so... Yeah, that got funding. So then it kind of went from there, and off the back of that, it got nominated for some awards, and then off the back of that, I was hired by a lithium mine in Europe, and it's the first lithium mine in Europe. And they hired me to make an artwork for it. So I did, and I made a story about a little girl and a robot in the future, in this kind of utopian vision of the future, but there's these kind of dark markers, and there's this kind of, hidden signals of dystopia. Because, I'm working for a mining company, right? And it's a difficult line to tread. I can't greenwash them, but at the same time, if we're going to become solar, wind, energy reliant, then we need to do more mining than ever before in history, because we need those minerals in order to build the machines which are going to turn us green. So it was a fine balance, but it was all digital. And then when this came up, I was like, why don't I do a public sculpture which is also an audiobook, so that people can come to the space and then they can hear the story about the piece, or they can hear the piece anywhere in the world, and then they can come and see it. And that was my idea. So this is the first step on that road, really.
Cool. No, that's awesome. Really well explained. So to kind of keep going, I remember when you first arrived, was it January 1st, December 29th? Like right when winter started.
It was one day before New Year's Eve. So the whole story is set on New Year's Eve. Yeah.
That's where it all started. So when you arrived here in New England in the dead of winter, basically, what was it like? Like, what was the cultural differences, or some weird things that you might have encountered from us folk?
Yeah, so I had a 30-hour flight. So I was traveling for 30 hours, and then Mariana met me, who is the best. I love Mariana, and she met me, and she took me to Market Basket. And the first thing was she grabbed some English muffins and like threw them at me and was like, "I'm going to take a picture for the team. Hold up the English muffins." And I was like, "Oh my god, where am I?" Yeah, like, it was lovely. And then, yeah, my first experience with Market Basket. So that, that features in the story. Like, there is a lot. And this is the thing. Okay, so England and America, they're not that different, but they're so different. So the whole thing is like, it's like being a dream. Because we get so much of your media all over the world. So we all feel like we've seen it before, like deja vu, but being here, you're like on the outside. And that's a very odd thing. It's like a memory. Everyone knows the cafe in France, right? But how many people have been there? And when you do go there, you're not used to that space. So, for example, chocolate hummus for me is an abomination.
Fair.
Yeah, in the same vein, I find it very uncomfortable when people like pack my bags in the supermarket. I don't know if I'm posh or if I'm lazy. I don't know what's going on. So for me, I can't buy more than 12 items because I don't. I'm counting. Like, is it 12? Yeah, it's 12. Okay, we can do that, and I'll come back tomorrow for the rest. Yeah. Tipping culture. I went the whole of New Year's Eve, and people kept giving me receipts to sign, and I was like, oh no, I don't need it. And I didn't realize why that was wrong until like the next day when it was like, oh yeah, because that's how they pay, right? And in the UK, we don't have that. Yeah. So, and that's the interesting thing about America. It's so familiar, but just out of reach somehow. And that's what the story is about. It's called Mimesis because the root of that word's mime. And it's kind of the old Manchester and the new Manchester. And I hired an American actor to play an English, but I hired an American actor to play me. So I was like, you are going to speak with an English accent for me and pretend to be who I am. Well, I am in your second Manchester, you're going to be my second Alex. And the whole concept is this kind of things copying each other, things reproducing, factory lines. We're in a factory. My grandmother worked in the original Manchester in one of these red brick loom factories, and now I'm here in America in a kind of reproduction of those factories as an artist. So that's what the whole story is about, and it's gritty. There are some kind of there are some dirty bits in there, but that's life. I just use the things which are around me.
Yeah, I think that the dirty bits kind of add some character and some flair that is a genuine reflection of your experience. We don't just experience this pain life all day, every day. There's peaks and valleys. So it's nice that you kind of kept to that flow as you continue to craft and play. And to hire a voice actor who can do 6 different voices and get everything wrapped up into one cohesive story. So really cool. So on that note, actually, I remember the first time we sat down. We were at EXO. Liz was there. Marlena was there, and we were talking about it. And you were like, we want you to have like basically full artistic freedom to do anything you want. Like we want you to experience Manchester and create something out of that. And I know at a later date we had talked about how that's really cool, but it's almost acts as a double-edged sword, because where you have the freedom to do what you might want to do, you also have everything that you could do. And how did that experience happen for you?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Sometimes when you're given full freedom, it's it's what do they call it? Like the tyranny of choice or something. You can't decide where to begin. That's why it's very good to write a story, because you can kind of cram it all in there with words. Words are much quicker than images to make. But yeah, no, I was told it at the beginning, but I didn't really believe it, because everyone tells you at the beginning, when an artist is hired, they always tell you you can do whatever you want. But they never mean it. So they usually mean like, for example, the lithium mine, you can do whatever you want. Well, can we criticize mining? No, you can't. So there's always limits. There's, what is the function of artist residency? Often it's urban regeneration, right? But really, this time, Mariana, I came to her on the first day, and I gave her 3 or 4 options of directions I was going, and she really said to me, like, Alex, I'm going to stop you there. Stop telling me the ideas that you're thinking of as though I'm going to approve them, because you really do just have to go and decide on your own. And that was the first time in my actual entire working career ever that I've actually been given that option. And it was incredible. So I went away and I thought about it, and I was like, right, well, where am I now? Where am I at? So this is why it's probably one of the most personal pieces of work I've ever done, honestly, which is surprising because it's a bunch of turkeys running around causing havoc. That probably says quite a lot about who I am. But I'm wandering around in the graveyard and someone sends me like a nasty message on a dating app. I put it in there, I was like, I'm going to be a funnel for everything. I'm not going to be a filter, I'm going to be a funnel. That's what I was thinking. So I put it all in there. I was, in the end, it's a challenge, but I was happy to have a challenge, honestly.
Yeah, so you said 2 magic words, graveyard and turkeys. So I think everyone's kind of like wondering, like, what inspired these colossus turkeys? How did that come across to you?
Yeah, I mean, the way that it happens in the story, so I've just put a 20-minute preview here, but the full thing is about 2 hours long. And the way it happened in the story is really how it happened in real life. I'm walking around the graveyard, I'm trying to find inspiration for what I'm doing. I'm finding loads in the graveyard. I'm looking, and there are some funny names. There's a guy called Dick Towel, which I thought was hilarious. There are some sad bits. There are some graves which are like sinking down into the floor and then frozen over the top. Kind of beautiful, like bizarre scenery. And the snow. We don't get that much snow. So then suddenly, from nowhere, these turkeys have surrounded me, and I look around, they just suddenly come out from behind like the tombs and the gravestones, and they're huge. And I'm just thinking, like, how can it be that big and no one's trying to eat it, It's like free food, but they're so strong. They're so strong and independent, they just don't take shit from anyone. And I love that, we don't have that. We've got pigeons. And I'm into, don't get me wrong, I'm into pigeons as well. I've got some other projects about pigeons, but I love them, they're like warriors. They're like, they have these breastplates and they have these, Yeah, they are. They're like warriors. They're incredible, these creatures, but they're silly, but they're scary. And that's what I was going for. I wanted them to be scary and silly at the same time. So their heads are kind of skull-like, and they look afraid, and they're kind of, there's something odd going on with them. But then they've got these funny little legs which are flapping around. And the idea is to have that bizarre balance between something that's funny, but also potentially very scary. Yeah.
Two questions. What graveyard are you referencing? Just so people can get a visual.
Oh yeah, it's Valley Graveyard. It's just up the road.
The most beautiful graveyard in the city. If you guys have never been there, you should check it out. And what was your nickname for the turkeys?
Gertrude. Wait, which one? Oh, the Graveyard Ladies. Yeah, so I started calling them the Graveyard Ladies, and then Ethan, the other artist in residence, I was telling him, like, yeah, we should go and look at the Graveyard Ladies, and I think you thought I was like some utter creep. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I met these ladies in the graveyard, let's go check them out. Yeah, like, the Graveyard Ladies.
Perfect. So, you had a pretty awesome experience here. I think you did a wonderful job of networking yourself. But even before you got here, you were kind of setting up, like, who you're going to meet, people that you're going to meet, groups of people. Like, who are some of these notable characters that you encountered along your way, or maybe influenced your story in certain ways?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everyone here, like, Chris reached out, and I just gave a lecture in SNU earlier, and, so warm and kind, and then there's John and Eric, and you guys like Amy and Jess, and you guys have been so warm and kind, and it's something it is very American, I think. Not to say that people are not kind in the UK or Korea or Germany, the other places I've lived, but they're not known for going out of their way to make friends, really. Whereas here, there's almost this like hunger for opportunity. And I posted on quite a few groups on Facebook, and these guys literally reached out. I mean, just wonderful. And we also are doing a project in Hudson. Eric is the principal of the school in Hudson, and we're doing sculptures there. You can see the chicken on the left here. So these will be fairly large, and there's two of them, and it pops up every now and then on the screen behind. But I mean, even the building, like Courtney, you're incredible. Trevor is on the soundtrack as well, so when you hear, like, we don't have the full thing playing here, but the guitar in the background, it's all people that I've met on the way. Obviously you guys, Mariana, Vivian. I feel like I'm taking an award. And now I'm starting to feel pressure. I'm like, shit, who have I left out? Like, why did you ask me this question? I'm gonna have a break. Where's my wine?
Great. And you actually just mentioned the next thing I want to bring up was your time in Hudson. I know you spent a good amount of time with students at the technical high school, Wilbur. Tell us more about it and the name of the high school. And
Wilbur Palmer Heights Careers Technical Center. Yeah. Okay, so this is a particular, and we talked about this when I was there. There's a particular thing that I have is that, like, creative and physical people are often not given the respect they deserve, and it follows them throughout their entire lives. It follows them forever, and the idea that people who have these kind of practical, strong skills, like welding and these problem solvers, these physical problem solvers, I never feel like they're given as much respect as the kind of academic side of things, So we were looking around, and these facilities are literally incredible. The welding facilities, all of this stuff is one. They're literally building a house inside of the building, and the kids are doing it. The 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, insane. and they have all of these animals there. And, in my mind, I was like, well, we should kind of coin the language of, the tech people in a way. So I was thinking, this is really an incubator. This is an incubator. And I thought, like, if zombies attack, this is where you would want to be, Like, they have the people that cut down the trees. That's what, they have the forestry. They have forestry, they cut down the trees. Then those trees go to the woodworking people, as a separate course, but they speak to each other. Then you have the other people who look after the animals. Then, the eggs and the milk and the dairy, that goes to the people who work in the restaurant, who are the caterers. And everything goes round. And it's really beautiful. And that's why I made it into these two chickens, as an incubator. They're incubators. And they're kind of celestial incubators, and they keep chickens. So the idea, I wanted them to look kind of ephemeral and flame-like and kind of universe, stars and this kind of thing, because yes, chickens are a comic, they're a comic animal. They're not respected, but they should be,
I don't think anyone has more respect for turkeys or chickens than you. I genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
Tell us what's this thing you got over here?
Yeah, so I did my plasma cutting in Vivian Beer, the sculptor Vivian Beer. She was very kind to me, and she stepped in and helped me. She helped me plasma cut these. And I saw something on the file, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but I wasn't going to say anything because I was just so grateful that we were getting it done. And then when it came out, she pulled it up. She's like, "I made your bottle opener." Yeah, she made the turkey leg into a bottle opener. Yeah, I love it, but it is a bit dangerous because when you've had a few and you get a bit angry, just claw someone.
Wonderful. Before we kind of wrap up, does anybody in the audience have any questions for Alex or about the residency or anything in that regards? No, great, good.
I'm just curious.
Oh, yep.
It does seem like you lean towards birds in several of the other things that I've seen. Is there something in particular that speaks to you?
Yeah, I really like patterning. Like, I'm really very pattern-based, kind of mentally. So I always lean towards patterns. So when the first time I made a bird, I was like, oh, this is great, because it's just like a pattern with a beak, It's like a pattern with a beak on. And then when I go to Korea, I have another thought. So my next project, I was like, why don't I do fish? Because it's like a pattern with an eye. Yeah, so I really like pattern, because I'm a very pattern-based person. I'm not really like flat planes, and I'm quite particular. I'm not really color. I don't go for color. I'm more black and white. So, yeah, I'm just drawn to the pattern. And then, the idea of the birds are very loaded. They have very loaded meaning always. Everyone takes a bird and makes it into something. So but that's why in the story I said, well, maybe the turkey can be like the moon god of America, because the eagle's like the sun god, But but turkey's like Thanksgiving, right? Yeah. Well, that's probably why they look scared. Run!
We're all proud. We're super honored that you were able to travel this far to spend time with us in the New England winter, the coldest, most freezing time of year. But yeah, thank you for your stay here. It pains us to see you go, but we understand you're off to the next potential installment of your vision over in Korea. So thank you for your time with us. It was awesome.
Part 1. Mimesis Meleagris. There was one thought in Alexander's head, which dominated all others. What am I going to make? What would he leave behind when he was gone? He had awoken to his alarm 45 minutes earlier, fully clothed, dazed from a jet-lag slumber. It was New Year's Eve, and his plane had landed from London less than 12 hours ago. Disoriented but driven, he tapped his pockets and recited, "Phone, money, keys," and ventured out into the blistering cold. A light rain splattered his face. Snow from the road had been heaped onto the pavement. He traipsed across rolling peaks, a frozen diorama of the Appalachians, and chunky cars barged alongside him, shiny packages like oversized chocolate bars. There were no other pedestrians. At every junction, he pushed a big button on the telegraph pole and waited to be allowed to cross. The lights seemed to never change. He would wait several minutes before a big orange hand waved him on, and straight away a mocking cuckoo noise chastised him across the road. The electronic countdown began at 2, forcing him to dash across the revving line of chocolate bars. It was Alexander's first time venturing out alone in Manchester. That is, Manchester, New Hampshire, New England, United States of America. Not, as he had believed when applying for the commission, Manchester, original England, not original Hampshire, and not the United Kingdom. He fumbled for his phone in his pocket, peeled off his left glove, and swiped up to call John. "Oi, oi, Pooh Bum! Happy New Year!" he shouted as the call was picked.